Soy la mujer luz del día, soy la mujer que hace girar, soy la mujer del cielo, soy la mujer de bien, mujer espíritu, porque puedo entrar y salir en el reino de la muerte, en el reino
I guess it was the bird song which attracted me to the park. It's really beautiful to be there and listen to the bird song. And often it's not quiet. And you hear the wind or the water lapping. For 35 years I've been listening. It's devastated, some kind. It has been changed since more than 200 years radically, but still something good is left. I don't think it's the best place in the world. I mean, this would be stupid. If we don't do something drastic, the park as it now exists, as the largest reed beds, for instance, in Middle Europe, it will stop to exist. Lake Neusiedl, super important for bird conservation, simply because of the size of the populations of the small birds which are resident there in the reed. Some birds have extremely elaborate and beautiful songs. Bearded reedling. I hear another bird, probably reed buntings there. It's jing jing. And where was I? Every time you hear this is this, I can't stop that. The reed itself, it's not my favorite habitat to walk in. You have to put on the waders, you have mosquitoes, it's getting to stink inside the reed, you're sweating like hell. It's not a joyful experience. But if the reeds aren't here, the reed birds, of course, have to leave the area. And they have to find other reed beds. The problem is you don't have many reed beds in Europe now. My colleagues and me and other people advocate now that we introduce again a fire management to save the space, the habitat for the bird species there.
It sounds so crazy to burn nature, but yeah. I think it was 2020. There was a big fire. 3 weeks later I was there and there was those big black surfaces, and everywhere in those black surfaces you have like green reed, and it looks amazing, by the way. The right time, the right places, it would be very good for the nature.
The fire idea is controversial because it's against common sense. So you want to burn something to conserve it.
So his knowledge is amazing. He knows like everything about the reed, and you can learn a lot from him and can ask every question.
This is all fluctuating. The ecosystem of Lake Neusiedl has always changed. In order to sustain the reed habitat, part of it has to be burned and even to die off. If these bird specialists don't exist there, they maybe can exist somewhere else. But the space in Europe where they can exist is shrinking in incredible fast speed. There will be maybe more common species, but not the species you find now. It's not so bad to spend your life listening. I hope the next generation can hear the same thing.
Silence is golden. And for the native frogs of New Zealand, it's their ticket to nabbing a meal, successfully. In fact, they stay hushed so well that very few people ever get a peep of them in the wild.
You know, the first question I get when people hear that I work on frogs is, oh, I hear them in the backyard all the time. And in fact, you're not hearing New Zealand frogs. New Zealand frogs are silent.
Joe is an amphibian enthusiast, but frogs are the apple of his eye.
I study the behavioral ecology of these frogs. I'm interested in what types of habitat they use, when they go there, how long they're there for, but the hardest part of the whole process is actually finding these frogs. So New Zealand's native frogs are very well camouflaged. They're small, about the length of your thumb at their largest, and they don't call.
Locating them is no walk in the park. It's a game of hide and seek the frogs excel in.
And this was a really stressful time for me, personally, because these are Tonga species. These are protected species in New Zealand. There's not many of them left. So any work that we do with these animals is extremely important.
So before Joe can make the leap to actual fieldwork, he must first run some trials. But he is not in this alone. With a little help from conservation outreach frogs, Joe will design a special belt carrying a radio tracker fit for the waistline of these tiny amphibians.
So for me, working with these animals and putting the radios on the animals for the first time, the biggest thing on my mind was, are they going to be okay?
It was 3 months of hard work, but Joe finally fashioned a harness that is certified frog friendly.
There we go. Just get this up there. Perfect. Thank you.
Using radio telemetry, Joe can now tap into the behavioural secrets these frogs have silently guarded for so long.
So I think the biggest thing we could do for New Zealand frogs is let people know that they're here and what they look like and how cool and unique they are. They're the only types of frog like them in the entire world.
There is no kiss that can guarantee the frogs are happily ever after. But Joe just might be the kind of fairy godmother they need to survive in this ever-changing environment.
En los Andes ecuatorianos, hace más de 40 años abundaba el jambato, un sapito de color negro y naranja conocido por los científicos como Atelopus ignescens, el arlequín incandescente. Su nombre proviene de la derivación del quichua jambato, que significa sapo, y era tan común que la ciudad de Ambato fue nombrada en su honor.
Durante los años 70 y la primera mitad de los 80 los jambatos eran realmente abundantes.
Conversaban nuestros papás y nuestros abuelos diciendo que la ranita había demasiado aquí en este sector, andaba en los caminos, andaban las ranitas montadas sobre uno, sobre otro.
Y ahí encontrábamos en camino, por ahí por llanos, por las pajas, así, cualquier parte.
Recuerdo desde los 8 años que tal vez acá existía en cantidad. Jugábamos con el sapito.
Hasta nos daba miedo pues de pisarle o así. De repente íbamos con un palito y con el palo hacíamos así caer por ahí. Y como sabían estar bien abrazados, no se caían ni los guaguas.
Sin embargo, para mediados de los años 80, los científicos habían notado que las poblaciones estaban disminuyendo rápidamente. Nadie se imaginó que esta especie, que alguna vez fue tan común, se enfrentaría súbitamente a la extinción.
Empezamos a notar que íbamos al páramo y de pronto ya no había. En efecto, varias enfermedades habían causado estas disminuciones poblacionales y estas extinciones de poblaciones, pero también que el cambio climático estaba detrás de estas declinaciones y extinciones de anfibios.
Casi unos
25 años que no he visto yo al jambato.
Soy David Jailaca y aquí en esta parte reencontré el jambato.
Tuvieron que pasar 28 años antes de que volvamos a ver nuevamente a encontrar una población de esta especie.
Yo no estaba buscando, sino yo vine a cortar la hierba nomás para los cuyes. Estaba cortando y ahí encontré que estaba caminando dentro de la hierba.
La urgencia de preservar a los últimos individuos dio origen a un programa de reproducción asistida en laboratorio a cargo del Centro Jambato y posteriormente en la creación de la Alianza Jambato. La Alianza Jambato es una iniciativa que reúne un equipo interdisciplinario conformado por investigadoras, investigadores y otros profesionales de diversas instituciones que trabajan en conjunto con la comunidad de Angamarca con el objetivo de proteger a la última población del jambato conocida en el mundo.
Lo que buscamos es sumar esfuerzos, de manera que en conjunto podamos desarrollar estrategias de conservación que beneficien a las personas de la comunidad y también a la biodiversidad local.
Queremos que la gente de la comunidad de este último refugio del jambato se apropie de su conservación y encuentre formas sostenibles de mejorar su calidad de vida, de modo que el jambato y la comunidad continúen coexistiendo. Pero esto no es tarea fácil. La Alianza Jambato trabaja incansablemente para conocer el estado actual de la última población del jambato, involucrando a las comunidades con las que cohabita y resaltando al jambato como un emblema de la conservación de anfibios, cerrando así las brechas entre la ciencia y la comunidad. Únete a esta iniciativa. Puedes contribuir con donaciones económicas, con tu conocimiento en alguno de los componentes del proyecto, como voluntario o simplemente compartiendo este video para que más gente pueda unirse a nuestra causa.
Démosle al jambato una segunda oportunidad.
This is the Café Marron plant. Native to the island of Rodriguez, it was last seen in 1877 and understandably thought to be extinct. Then, one day a schoolboy said, "There's one in my front garden." And lo and behold, there was. Unfortunately, it was rather beaten down by bad weather, diseases, and goats. It's also a plant unable to reproduce by itself, a little inconvenient for the last of its species. But luckily, scientists love a challenge. Cuttings were taken to labs where scientists and botanists grew them, cloned them, seeded them, and after a lot of experimentation, the Café Marron flowers started to grow. Since then, they have managed to grow more of the Café Marron plant and begun to reintroduce them to Rodriguez. It is still endangered, as are many plant species, but this story is a reminder of the things we can achieve, how far science has come, and that there still is hope.
Cóndor de California, una historia de conservación.
Tuve el privilegio de tener un padre muy amoroso, que le debo todo mi amor a la naturaleza y el respeto que le tengo a la naturaleza, a su educación. Lo más difícil fue separarme de mi hija y de la familia, porque el tiempo no regresa.
A mí me interesó trabajar con este pájaro, a pesar de las condiciones, porque como desapareció de la península, no se conocía cuándo desapareció, nadie lo había manipulado en esta región, había trabajado con este animal. Yo me di a la tarea de comprometerme, o sea, no venía a probar, yo venía a establecer una población de cóndor que fuera aquí salvaje, sabiendo que era un trabajo de por vida.
Cada organismo tiene de veras una función en el ecosistema. Mucha gente no se imagina lo importante que son los opilotes o los buitres para el medio ambiente, inclusive para la salud humana.
Yo creo que es un compromiso moral de la sociedad, de estar comprometidos con el medio ambiente. Ahorita lo estamos viendo con el cambio climático. El cóndor es una parte de la cadena que está desapareciendo.
Nuestro bienestar del ser humano va ligado a la naturaleza. Si no cuidamos a la naturaleza, nos vamos a desaparecer, como muchas otras especies que se han extinto por nuestra causa. Sí necesitamos tener conciencia de que cada una de nuestras acciones puede tener repercusiones y en muchas de esas ocasiones irreversibles.
Saber que la especie se ha estado reproduciendo, para mí eso es la satisfacción más grande. No es en vano lo que uno vive aquí y sí está la especie adaptándose y sobreviviendo, que era el objetivo principal del programa desde sus inicios.
Hay gente que me dice, ¿por qué están aquí? ¿Por qué aguantan? Y pues yo sé que si nos vamos desaparece este animal.
El 12 de agosto se realizó la primera reintroducción de 6 cóndores procedentes de Estados Unidos al Parque Nacional Sierra de San Pedro Mártir. Actualmente vuelan libres 42 individuos de cóndor de California en México. Tras varias décadas extinto en México y gracias al compromiso, cooperación y voluntad, hoy el cóndor de California ha regresado a surcar el cielo mexicano, dejando un mensaje de reflexión acerca de nuestra relación con la naturaleza.
What is an aquifer and why does it matter to me? Water is in a constant cycle. Our water today is the very same water that rained on the dinosaurs. Of all of the water on Earth, only 3% is fresh water. And of that fresh water, the majority is ice and around 1% is held in rivers, lakes and marshes. The remaining 30% is held beneath our feet as groundwater. Considering how much water we can see running through rivers, that's a lot of groundwater. So what is it? Groundwater is simply water held beneath the earth in soil and rock. The layer of rock holding this water near the surface of the earth is called an aquifer. Aquifers fill up over time as water passes through from the surface. The aquifer is like a sponge, where the water filters down through tiny pores and cracks in permeable rock, where it's stored over many years, moving and flowing underground. In the southeast of England, 70% of the water supply comes from groundwater. Water is pumped out of the aquifer for us to use and drink. But groundwater is becoming increasingly polluted by our activities on the land. The way land is managed is important. For example, overuse of fertilisers, exposed manure heaps, and equipment leaking chemicals can pollute the groundwater. Other pollution comes from towns. For example, runoff from roads containing oils and microplastics is washed down the drain. Chemicals used in gardening are absorbed into the ground, and waste from industry can end up leaching into the aquifer. And to put this in context, 1 litre of oil is enough to contaminate 1 million litres of drinking water. To clean this water costs money and requires a lot of energy, but we can look after our groundwater in different ways. We can be more water-wise by using less and doing what we can to prevent pollution. We can help manage water better in the environment by slowing down the flow, filtering pollution out in rainscapes and harvesting it to be used again, catching this valuable water before it disappears into our sewers. Rainscapes can be simple alternatives to hard surfaces, which absorb and filter water using the power of plants. We can switch tarmac for gravel gardens, create green roofs, rain gardens or dipped swales. These catch and clean dirty water and allow it to sink into the soil. Looking after our water will help us to adapt to climate change. Managing water in more sustainable ways will help us to cope better with warmer, wetter winters, hotter, drier summers, and more frequent and extreme weather events. If we look after our aquifer, we can help protect our precious groundwater, enjoy the beautiful rainscapes we create, and make sure we have plenty of fresh water for our future.
I grew up with a dad that was always, somebody ought to do something about that. You know, and I'd say, well, what about you? No, somebody should do something about that, but it was never him. He was never the somebody. Yeah, so when my wife and I moved here, we put together a mission vision statement. And part of that was leaving the land in a better state than when we found it. I complain a lot, but I guess, you know, sometimes at least we're part of the solution, not just always complain about what's wrong. Well, my name is Clint Blythe, and I'm a retired professional geologist and full-time rancher. My wife and I, we steward a little over 4,000 acres of land in southeast Saskatchewan. The water that goes through our property makes its way all the way to Hudson's Bay, and the water quality appears to be declining, but we don't have a lot of data on that.
My name is Carrie Finley. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Biology at the University of Regina. Ultimately, the issues around water in Saskatchewan really stems from the fact that we don't have a lot of water. So we've got a lot of agriculture because the soils are productive. We get a lot of things that are washing into our waterways, and as a result, this means that things like algae can grow really easily. And that can cause some additional problems beyond just being green and kind of gross, but they can start to produce some toxins as well. So typically what we would do is that we would, hire some students in the summer. We'd have graduate students, we'd have people that are well trained and use some big fancy equipment that will go out, once every 2 weeks or once every month, and they will sample the water. It'll come back to the lab. It'll take us several months to, get the samples analyzed for everything that we want to measure and so forth. And so this project that we're working on right now is partnering with water rangers in order to get some communities involved in sampling for water quality on the lakes and the rivers that they are interested in boating, fishing, swimming in, and so forth. I think people have a very intuitive sense of what's happening. They feel like things are worse than they were when they were kids, or they have concerns about it, but they don't currently have that full understanding. They don't exactly know why or what's going on, and it's just sort of a black box. And so I think working with water rangers and getting them out testing themselves, they can start to really understand what's happening as the season progresses. They can compare year to year. And so it really gives people a better understanding of what's going on in their lakes. You know, what I get out of this work really is just the feeling that it's really nice to be working on something that means something to people. We're doing stuff where people are really engaged, they are concerned, and we can have this conversation and we can help educate people and provide the data that they are looking for.
You know, we're ranchers, but we're also stewards of the land, and we're just here for the rest of our one generation. We're trying to make a difference, and making sure the water quality is good and stuff, that's part of that.
Сайн байцгаана уу хүүхдүүдээ. Энэ бол Монголын минь бас нэгэн бахархал болсон говь нутаг билээ. Энэ л говьоос өнөөдөр бидний өгүүлэх түүх эхэлнэ. Өнөөдөр бяцхан янзгнуудын хувьд маш чухал өдөр. Учир нь тэд анх удаа ус уухаар ээж аавыгаа даган говийн ойролцох ганц булгийг зорин яваан энэ.
Ээж, ус тэгээд амьтай юм уу? Хөө минь, ус бол бидний болоод амьдтын амин чухал зүйл юм шүү дээ. Тийм үү? Тэгвэл сайн хандлаа ууж аваад буцан тиймээ аваа.
Эвидээ. Баян хангаа минь ойрдоо бороо хурггүй. Газрын шийг багсаж ганц булаг дээр л бүгд цуглах болж дээ.
Өвөө, та юу хараад байна?
Өө минь. Адгийн булаг дээр хэдэн бүхэн усан дэрж байна.
Бүхэн гинэ. Би харъя. Нэрэн ор ямаа байна.
Энэ бүхэн гэдэг амьтан миний хүү. Монголын говьд л амьдардаг хоодж байгаа амьтан та.
Өө, босоо чадахгүй ах шиг тойроод яваад байна.
Алив дуран говьдөө миний хүү. Хөрхий. Энэ ганц булган тэмээ мал гიშгээд уухын аргагүй болжээ дээ.
Ээжээ, энэ тэгээд ус юм уу? Та хэлэхдээ зинхэр өнгөтэй уухад цэрүү татаад сайхан гисэн бидтэй. Тийм ээ хүү минь. Гэхдээ энэ удаад битэн таац дутлаа. Дараагийн шанд хүртэл миний хоёр нэлэх янзаг явж арайлж чадахгүй л болов.
Өвөнө ер нь маргаашнаас нутгийн иргэдтэй уулзаж булгийн ихийг хамгаалах талаар ярилцсан байц.
Булгийн ихийг хамгаална гинэ?
Тийм ээ миний хүү. Булгийн их ундрагыг хамгаалчих бол урсгал нь нэмэгдээд бусад амьтдад ч гэсэн хүрэлцээтэй болох юм байна. Зөвхөн Монголд минь байдаг хөөрдөн бяцхан Монгол бүхэн болоод олон зүйлийн ургамал амьтанд амьдрал бэлгэлсэн нутгийн иргэддээ үзэгчдийнхээ өмнөөс дахин талархал илэрхийлье. Манай өнөөдрийн бяцхан түүх энд хүрээд жаргаж байна. Хүүхдүүд минь, үзэгчид минь, усаа гамтаа хэрглэж байгаарай. Чамайг усаар тоглож байх зуурт өөр нэгэн газар бүхэнгийн янзах шиг олон амьтан цэвэр усаар дутагдан сангаж байгааг эргцүүлж нэг бодоод үзээрэй.
We came into this world with eyes attuned to detail. A plant, a rock, a pile of dirt. We hold these things like the universe in the palm of our hand, or rather we cling to them, desperately trying to wield their power. Like Alice, we fall deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Some say we get caught up in the minutiae of life, that we fail to see the wood from the trees, and so the world passes us by like a picture in a frame. But what if we perceived nature from within, in all of her forms, even those made of concrete, and looked around through the eyes of the wind? Now, the wood is no longer a series of plants, rocks, piles of dirt. Rather, in the twisting, gnarling, knotting of roots, we begin to move with its pulse. It is in this polyphony of breaths that the natural world is freed from the bondage of nouns, and rather reveals a verb. A plant buds into a flower, a rock hugs the shore, and a pile of dirt takes and gives life. To be human is to interweave oneself in this movement. To not know with certainty where one ends and the rest of the world begins. So no, we did not come into this world, but out of it, like a wave from the ocean, and into the air at once what seemed corporeal melted as breath into the wind. We are reminded that the water in our body is just visiting. It was a thunderstorm before, and it will be an ocean soon enough. We are more weather pattern than stone monument. And so, in our search for ways forward, our return into the woods is simultaneously a search for ourselves. Let us not simply care for nature then, but partner with it. Let us not reimagine it, but begin to imagine anew, with nature's entanglements as our co-conspirator, our partner, our comrade, and our guide.
When an artist communicates science through artistic means, this is artivism. The aim of artivism is to incite change in thought or behaviour. It is an effective, passive conservation tool, and something I feel passionately about. My name is Alicia Hayden. I am a wildlife artist from the UK. Tichwana Ngube is also a wildlife artist. He is known as the Watchman in Zimbabwe, where he paints elephants and big cats from life, showcasing their beauty through his art. I wanted to uncover his story and see how Titch the Watchman uses his art to make a difference to wildlife conservation. When I first met Titch as part of an artist panel, I was blown away by his enthusiasm for Zimbabwean wildlife. I'd never been to Africa before, so travelling there to meet Titch and see his artivism in person was a little intimidating. Titch calls himself the Watchman after the biblical story in which the Watchman warns cities of danger.
We really have to take care of our environment. So maybe there is a need for a watchman to blow the trumpet and tell people about what's coming.
Titch spends lots of his time at the local elephant sanctuary. He told me how he had the privilege of sketching a cheetah called Sylvester.
Sylvester was a male cheetah kept at the Wild Horizons Elephant Sanctuary. The first time when I met him, I squatted down in front of him. I'd never seen a cheetah before, so I remember touching him for the first time as he was sitting down with his 2 feet up. I rolled my hand on his shoulders, touched his hair and his tail as well. So I sat down, did a bit of some sketch, just a few lines, hoping that the next time I come, maybe I'm gonna give myself some time to sit down and sketch him better.
One of my favourite paintings is an artivism of Sylvester, painted in Titch's signature style, Splash. I was excited to try my own hand at creating a splash piece with Titch.
I always had this thing when water spills on the table, especially on the ground, just mix it with paint, splash it there, and when it dries up, just think of something that must happen. That is how the splash thing came. I felt so good about producing that.
I had never considered that Titch might use such an unpredictable technique to create such detailed artworks.
I'm just trying to send a message to you guys, like, you know what, I'm a wildlife person. I love wildlife and I draw wildlife and it's part of my livelihood as well. How about if we can let's preserve what we have.
Titch feels strongly about the importance of sharing his passion for conservation with others, especially his children, Caesar and Siabonia.
So the art that I do, they begin to see it from their early years. So since they are images, and they now know the animals. Oh, so today you are painting a leopard. Oh yes, yes. How did you know about that? I know it's a leopard, you told me so. Now I know that is a leopard, that's a cheetah. Okay, so you're learning. So kids learn much better using images. They're like my huge fans of my work. Each time when I finish a work of art, they will say, wow, Daddy, that's nice.
I was inspired to see how Titch used his artwork to educate his children. I have often held myself back when I paint, but seeing the way Titch experiments with techniques has pushed me to do the same. Artivism is about breaking boundaries and changing people's perceptions of the wildlife which surrounds us. Being an artivist can be lonely. It can feel like you're the only person trying to make a difference. But meeting Titch has shown me that there is hope. Artists everywhere are making works which highlight the impact we are having on our planet. And with that, I think we can make a difference.
Le nez vissé sur ton portable, t'es inutile, tu sers à rien. T'es nul à chier, t'es lamentable, tu nous fatigues, en clair tu crains. Né bien à l'abri dans le confort d'une société qui prend soin de toi. De quoi tu te plains, et toi t'as tort. À être raisonnable, c'est pas ton fort. On te répète qu'il faut bosser, faire des efforts, subir, se battre. Oui, dans cette vie tu dois souffrir, tracer ta route à grands coups de latte. Vivre une vie de paranoïaque, pour être au top d'un monde en flammes. Tout foutre en l'air, sans état d'âme. Pour exister, c'est trop l'éclate. T'as osé écouter ton cœur, sentir en toi la grande lueur. On t'a condamné, démoli, t'aimes surtout pas, c'est interdit. Au fond t'as bien compris l'embrouille, quand tout s'effondre, se barre en couille. N'oublie jamais qu'on t'a à l'œil, reste à ta place et ferme ta gueule. T'en peux plus des marchands de bonheur, dont le seul programme est la peur. Peur de l'avenir, peur de la nuit, peur de l'autre, on est tous ennemis. Peur de la mort, peur du grand soir, peur de l'amour, peur de la vie. Peur de se croiser dans le miroir, peur de la peur qui nous détruit. Ta colère, ta rage de vivre, ta rébellion, dégueule tout ce qui te désespère et hurle non, sans comme c'est bon, sans ton pouvoir, sans ta puissance, sans sur ta peau la pluie, le vent, sans la fureur de l'ouragan qui déchire enfin ton silence, sans surtout ta nature première, ta source de vie pleine de demain, sans bien ta force et ta lumière, tu es parfaite, sois-en certain, sans la planète sous tes pieds, elle est bien là, elle te soutient, elle t'aime et elle sait ta beauté, toi-même, est-ce que tu t'en souviens? Tu es la chance de notre monde, son origine et son destin. Tu es l'intelligence qui gronde. Tu n'es pas seul, nous ne sommes qu'un. Entends tes sœurs, entends tes frères, tous unis dans un même élan. Nous ne défendons pas la terre, nous sommes la terre qui se défend. 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 Nous sommes la terre qui se défend.
Since arriving in Manchester, I've been captivated by the wild creatures that call this concrete jungle home. From the parakeet's vibrant green colors to the robin's calming call, nature has found a way to thrive in this urban terrain. Yet one cunning creature remained beyond my reach, its secrets and mysteries shrouded in the veil of the night. This film is the story of my 5-month journey understanding the behavior of the elusive urban fox. My housemate spoke of the foxes that roam the city, explaining how they're most active between dusk and dawn. Night after night I waited and watched, yearning for a glimpse of the fox's fiery fur, and on one moonlit night, under the cover of darkness, I finally caught a glimpse of the fox. The fox is a scavenger, a predator that prowls the night with a nose keen enough to smell prey from kilometers away. During their nighttime escapades, foxes use scent to mark their territories, sometimes up to 70 times an hour. Having seen the fox in January, I was determined to catch a closer glimpse. So I set up a station in the garden and waited in silence, hoping to witness its beauty once more. But despite my efforts, the cunning creature did not show. With their sharp ears that can hear a watch ticking from 40 meters away and a strong sense of smell, it's possible the fox sensed my presence and chose to remain hidden. I turned to motion-activated camera traps, hoping to catch the fox unaware. After a brief cameo by the neighbor's cat, the fox I had seen in January was back. I felt a surge of excitement and pride as if I had finally made a connection with this enigmatic animal. But as sudden as the fox appeared, it vanished into the night, leaving me wondering if my eyes would ever capture such a sight again. Days turned into weeks, each moment feeling like an eternity as I anxiously waited for the fox to return. But it never did. In Britain, an estimated 100,000 foxes are killed in traffic collisions each year. With the arrival of spring, my hopes for the fox's return grew stronger. And one night, as I waited patiently in the hide, a faint rustling of leaves caught my attention. The fox limped into the garden, slowly triggering the camera traps. Its once regal coat reduced to a pitiful skeleton of bone, its tail a haunting reminder of the insidious mange that had ravaged its body. A cruel and relentless foe, sarcoptic mange wrought by parasitic mites, invades the fox's skin. The fox's flesh itches and screams for relief, forcing the creature to scratch and scrape at its own skin. The result is hair loss, cuts, and infections that eat away at its once strong body. Eventually organs wither away and the fox's life fades, often within a mere 6 months. But in the face of such adversity, a glimmer of hope remained. I reached out to a local fox rescue organization, and soon a team of compassionate volunteers arrived to nurse the ailing creature back to health.
So this is how we treat foxes, that we get enough mange.
Through their tireless efforts, the fox not only survived but flourished, its once bare tail now adorned with a magnificent coat of fur, its eyes gleaming with a newfound vitality. And in the presence of such indomitable spirit, I was reminded that even in the darkest moments, like the first flowers of spring, hope can still bloom. When the fox was finally released back into the wild, I felt a sense of profound satisfaction, as if I had played a small but meaningful role in its story. For in Manchester, a city of steel and concrete, a haven for wildlife exists, where humans and animals can coexist in harmony. To witness the majesty of nature, one only needs the patience to wait for it to reveal itself.
My understanding is society only has two things. We have our people and we have our land. When we develop solar arrays, we need to keep our land functional because that's part of our society. Traditional solar installations, the land is a detriment because it potentially can grow vegetation that might shade the solar panels. And if it shades the panels, then that's less electricity it produces. So they hire people to go in and mow it or spray that land and keep that land degraded over time. A different way of doing it is by elevating the panels so that you can have solar above agriculture. Agrivoltaics is agriculture and photovoltaics smashed together to make agrivoltaics. The solar panels provide that shade, that microclimate for crops to be able to grow in, and it makes it easier for people to be within that space or for tractors to be within that space. Agrivoltaics has so many wins involved with it.
We are seeing a mutually beneficial relationship between the solar panels and the vegetation. As temperatures get too hot, many plants shut down their photosynthetic activities throughout the middle part of the day. The partial shade from the panels allows that photosynthesis to continue occurring throughout the growing day. The plants actually create a cooler microclimate underneath the panels. That cooler microclimate creates higher efficiencies and higher output. The cooler conditions underneath the panels lead to less evaporation of water from the soil. That allows us to reduce the amount of supplemental water we give for irrigation. which in some cases could be half as much water to achieve the same yields. So what this means is that instead of vegetation serving as a barrier to solar development, it actually can lead to lower O&M costs for managing, as well as higher panel efficiencies leading to more clean energy production.
Jack Solar Garden is the largest commercial research site for agrivoltaics in the US. 3,276 panels, producing enough clean energy for about 300 homes in our area.
We're growing at least 15 different varieties of crops, everything from salad greens to cooking greens to root veggies. We were really excited to make use of the space under the solar panels because it has historically just been sitting there unused, and to be able to work in the shade in the middle of the day. I think that could have really long-term benefits for farm worker health. We feel like there's so many benefits. Reduced water, the plants will do better because of the microclimate created by the panels. The farmers have a better time because they're not in the sun all day. That we're using the land for food production instead of it just sitting there vacant. And it'll all be funneled back to the local community, including donations to food pantries, CSA programs, and also some farmers markets. It might be win-win-win.
We want to show our community that there's a different way that we can have solar energy being produced across our country, that it doesn't have to be how it's always been.
The potential is boundless. Everywhere people live, they need energy and they need food.
The insights we're gaining here will inform development not only in Colorado, but also throughout the country and throughout the world.
We need bigger change, and we need it from our policymakers, we need it from the solar developers, we need it from landowners.
Well, another day building this Tower of Tragedy.
What do you mean by that? What is this place?
It'll be bank offices, overpriced apartments, and a shopping mall.
Wow, a true beacon of capitalism. What's the deal with this guy?
That's Larry. His home in the jungle got destroyed. He has no other place to go.
It's true. Big oil companies and deforestation forced me into this city.
That's terrible, Larry. Inflation raised my rent so high, my wife, my kids, and I need to move back into my parents' house.
Wow, that's rough. Seems like everybody's getting displaced.
That's true. Oh, great. Our boss is here.
Hey! Stop monkeying around with that gorilla. Get back to work.
What did he say? I have no idea.
It's not even lunch yet. It's only 9:30 in the morning.
So, our planet's being destroyed. What can we do about it? We can close our eyes and imagine a world working together to save the Earth. Let's try. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, it's beautiful.
That gorilla is too heavy. That chain is gonna snap.
Whoa, I'm out of here.
That's the last warning. You're both fired.
Huh?
So what happens now? How do we save the Earth for future generations? We have to respect and heal this planet. For our children.
Fish will see the world in different ways. A lot of sharks probably don't see any color. Other fish, they're like a dog. They basically see kind of yellows and greens and things like that. And then other fish can see probably a very similar range of colors to what we can. I'm Martin. I'm a university researcher and underwater photographer living in Cornwall in the far southwest of the UK. I've always been fascinated by colour in nature and what it's used for and how it's evolved. Particularly in the marine world, there's a lot of mysteries as to why creatures look the way they do. So why a jellyfish might have really conspicuous kind of striking markings, or why, you know, other animals might have blue stripes or something. Often people don't really know. I think quite often UK waters are very, perhaps misunderstood as being kind of murky brown, not much there. The moment you go beneath the surface, there's this whole rich world. You've got these spectacular seascapes and these incredible marine environments with algae that can be brown and yellow and then bright red and purple, or almost a luminescent green. And big shoals of fish kind of circling around all the seaweed, and they're wonderful to watch. And in a lot of my underwater photography, I really want to capture the vibrancy and the diversity of colours in the marine world. They're often really close to the shore in very shallow water, so people might be paddling or standing right next to them. It's really important that people can have an insight into that world and feel like they want to safeguard it, because so much depends on it. And I still believe that we can change things for the better and have a prosperous future and look after wildlife, but that's only going to happen if we take serious steps to make sure we safeguard the natural world and protect it and restore it. And a major part of that is the oceans, because the oceans really are so critical to the state of the planet in many ways.
Hi everyone, it's me, Jenna, and I love crabs. You might be wondering why I'm out of breath. You see, I don't do very well outside of water. My asthma acts up and my skin gets dry. I'm a little tired now, but since you're here, I might as well tell you the story of my life. I was born amongst the feet of giants. Me and all 5,734 of my brothers and sisters. We never got to meet our parents, but it was far from lonely. In the day, we made friends with the land walkers and made sure to avoid the surface. Too close, we might be scooped up by scaly longtails or the sky beast. At night, the darkness was always accompanied by blinking stars. I've always wondered what they taste like. As for food, we never went hungry. You can say we were well fed by tiny prawns, crabs, and sometimes hard, colorful chips. That last one tastes divine. Though, after eating them, I still feel hungry and often sick. As time passed, the giants who once sheltered us walked away. Things were never the same after that. In the day, more of my siblings were taken by the sky beast, and at night, we no longer saw blinking stars. Oh, hi there. Welcome back, you. Okay, back to our story. My siblings and I caught wind that conditions were better in deeper waters. We all decided to venture out. What we found was paradise. The grass was not only greener, but the crabs were better too. We made many friends. The grey grass chomper, the brown hardback, the upright longtail, lazy stars and spiky balls. The lush green carpets were far from safe. It was constantly rocked by earthquakes. Every night we had to sleep with one eye open, because if you didn't, the earthquakes could swallow the very spot you slept in. Sand towers would later appear in its place. I was sad to see the sand towers affecting so many of our friends. Many left without saying goodbye. Sometimes, smelly liquid will flow out of these waters. I don't really like them. They scare the crabs away. While the green carpets made us bigger and stronger, we decided to follow our instincts, or rather, our stomachs, into deeper waters. Hello again. Picking up from where I left off, my brothers and sisters were looking for a new home. Huddled together, we swam into deeper and deeper waters. And voila, there it was, nature's art gallery. Everywhere we looked, our eyes were met with a kaleidoscope of colors. Everything was magical. Here, we also met the two-tailed fish. They were very noisy and constantly tried to touch us. Some of them fed us yummy food. They didn't taste like my favorite crabs, but if I ate them too much, I'll be bloated for days. Not very nice. We didn't have earthquakes in the art gallery, but sometimes there was thunder when the sun was up. I would be so frightened and I would swim as fast as I could. That's what got me to where I am. Stuck. I'm feeling really sleepy. I guess I'll have to tell you more when I wake up. Hey, I'm back in the water. Well, it was nice meeting you. I'm going to go join my family now. Bye!
Have you ever gone into a grocery store and bought Atlantic salmon? Turns out, in New England, you can buy it everywhere. But did you know that Atlantic salmon are an endangered species? Salmon have been listed on the Endangered Species Act since 2008. But they've been disappearing from the Connecticut River ever since the first European settlers came to North America and started building dams. In fact, salmon were almost gone from this area before the Constitution was signed. The Connecticut River starts in Canada, runs through Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and ends in Connecticut. This is where I met with fisheries biologist Stephen Gebhard, who worked in the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection for 42 years. He personally oversaw the planning, design, and construction of more than 65 fishways in Connecticut. These fishways, along with dam removal, were part of a project to bring back Atlantic salmon to the Connecticut River. We met at the Salmon River, where he explained to me how a fish ladder or fishway works.
Fish come up from the Connecticut River and the Salmon River, and they're in here, and some of them want to go upstream. This is the entrance of the fishway. Now, it's not operating now because we've got boards in the top blocking the water. But in April, we take those boards out, and you'll see it'll be a rushing stream will rush right out there.
And then the fish will swim off?
Yeah, because their instinct is to swim upstream into the current.
Yeah.
And so they don't know it's a fishway. They just know that this is a heavy rapids and they can't get up over there, and they find this and they swim around.
What are the largest setbacks you've had?
Well, there's been a lot of challenges, and some of them we successfully met. For instance, when fish first started coming back, salmon first started coming back, they were dying of fungus and some diseases, but we came up with solutions to that, including some vaccines and some antibiotics that worked really well. The dams, of course, and we, little by little, we've improved fish passage, especially upstream. I think for salmon, we solved all of the upstream fish passage problems. But frankly, the biggest challenge at the end was climate change. Atlantic salmon is a cold water species. It needs cold, cool water, both in the river and in the ocean. And with things warming up, and here in Connecticut, we're at the southern extent of the range. We're as far south as they ever got. So we were warmest as salmon ever got. And so with climate change, not only is the warmth moving up and making southern waters like Connecticut less hospitable to salmon, but it's always also bringing up other species of fish that used to live down there. Now they live up here. They eat salmon, and salmon didn't ever evolve a defense mechanism
because
they didn't live together.
Although the restoration program ended due to federal funding being cut, Mr. Gebhard still works hard to count and protect the salmon. It is now a salmon legacy program, and he feels that having salmon in the Connecticut River is good for educational purposes, but not just people that live in New England. He associates having salmon in our rivers with having bald eagles in Connecticut. While we're never fully going to have our eagle or salmon population back to where it was, it's inspiring to see them here anyway.
Those salmon that we're still trying to restore in Maine don't belong just to the people of Maine. They belong to all Americans. Just like the polar bears in Alaska belong to all Americans. And so we all hope to support what's going on in Maine to protect these last wild Atlantic salmon of the U.S. And so by having a few salmon in Connecticut and by generating interest here and in other places like Chicago or New York, we can help gain the political support to do what we have to do in Maine as well.
Ja, har vi begynt? Mitt navn havnesjefen, og jeg bor i Os med kona og familien. Lokalaviser liker å fremstille meg som hissig, men det bare tull. Nå skal dere bli kjent med en ekte meg.
Han prøver jo så godt han kan. Det jo ganske vanskelig å oppdra ville svanunger i en by.
Nei, jeg husker det at han lagde en del trøbbel i havnen vår, til tross for sitt vakre utseende.
Nei, jeg husker jo at det var litt spetakkel og angrepene. Så egentlig det. Du da?
Ja, jeg husker at han var en helt gal svane.
Men så mitt forhold var veldig, både og til havnesjefen.
Ja, vi skulle slepe ei snekka inn til sentrum da. Og så hadde nett slept den inn, kjørte bort båten min, skulle bort på en annen kai. Der kom han, fløy han rett ut i båten. Ja, så den var ikke glad i meg, for å si det sånn.
Jeg må jo liksom vise litt hvem som sjefen av og til.
Du har ikke tenkt å flytte og komme deg unna alt dette styret?
Nei, herregud. Det her jeg født, og det her jeg skal dø.
Jo, han har jo litt sinneproblem. Aldri på en farlig måte, selvfølgelig. Bare for å si fra og passe på. Hysj, vent litt. Nei, han jo aldri stygg med folk.
Publikum opplevde jo han ofte som en ganske hissig liten fyr, sant? Litt sånn aggressiv og pågående. Men når han var hos oss, så var han jo alltid kjempegrei. Og det tror jeg hadde vel litt med det å gjøre at han hadde jo ikke familien sin der, så han hadde jo ikke noen han skulle beskytte, liksom. Og det var jo noen sånne fantastiske gjensynsscener når han og fruen traff hverandre igjen. Det var jo som tatt rett ut av en Disney-film. Jeg jo litt redd for at noen syntes det var litt morsomt at han var så hissig. At han lot seg terge, liksom.
Ja, han ble jo litt påvirket da, ja. Kom litt tett på folk til tide.
Det sant at du dro et barn under vann tidligere denne uken?
Nei, det var liksom det som fikk meg til å reagere, fordi at nå begynte det å bli alvorlig. Da var det nok. Da var grensen min nådd.
Alt dette mas om avliving. Det bare politikersnakk. De kommer jo ikke til å faktisk gjøre det. Jeg elsker Os, og Os elsker meg.
Ja, altså jeg husker jo at han var et godt innslag i Os, eller Bjørnafjorden det jo nå da, men jeg synes han var kjempefin. Jeg liker jo noen svane, jeg.
Jeg husker han som et dyr som ble plaget, et vilt dyr, som ble plaget av folk i havna spesielt.
Det var jo mye engasjement i kommentarfelt og sånn, hos Midtsiden og i BT og på Facebook og greier. Folk ble skikkelig sure, altså.
Det var guffent en periode, for familien min ble jo trua, sant? Både ungene mine og alle, de ble litt sånn engstelige for meg. For det var såpass alvorlige trusler at jeg i hvert fall følte det var veldig alvorlig.
Faen. Nei. Nå sitter jeg i det.
Ja, der gikk han på en smell.
Man bør prøve andre løsninger. Nå var jo det noen på Tysnes som var villig til å ta imot ham. Jeg tenker man burde prøve det i hvert fall, og prøve å sørge for at det ikke ble nødvendig å avlive han.
Jeg føler meg ganske dust. Massekontrollen litt. Kanskje jeg skulle ha revurdert Tysnes.
Vi har fått beskjed om å slippe det løs. Det for mye oppstyr.
Da man slapp ut igjen, da var det jo håp, men da varte det liksom ikke så lenge.
Hei, hva faen det du holder på med? Vet du hvem jeg er? Det et jævla rasshøl. Kom deg vekk! Slipp meg, for faen! Hei, jeg har rettigheter. Jeg forlanger å få snakke med advokat.
Han vekke nå, og
Selv om det virker som om livet bare går videre uten han, så ser vi en slags arv som henger igjen i lokalsamfunnet. Han gikk gjennom mye og gjorde mye dumt, og selv om noen gjerne husker havnesjefen i et dårlig lys, så ligger det jo mye godt igjen.
Men hva tenker du om ryktene om at havnesjefen først er i live?
Det hadde jo vært positiv overraskelse.
Ja, det hadde vært veldig positivt.
Det vet jeg 100% at han ikke har, da jeg har sett obduksjonsrapporten av han.
Nei, det tror jeg ikke på. Da er det en ny havnesjef.
Det er et spørsmål jeg ikke har tatt stilling til.
Da hadde jeg blitt kjempeglad. Men jeg vet at det ikke er riktig.
Det hadde vært en fin plot twist.
Reisen er lang til et sted vi kan hvile, men med vår sang trenger ingen å tvile. Vi synger en svanesang, en avskjed i regnvåte fjær, mot en solnedgang flyr vi til varmere skjær. Her vil vi bli på vår holme i bukta, så lykke med frihet i lufta.
They're exquisite. And you have to look at them and you work out why they're special. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're very tiny and they've got these little neat ears and this little neat nose. They don't look like other English rodents really, so they're quite unique. I think every species should have a champion, and I'd like to feel that I was champion for harvest mice back in the turn of the century. So my name's Penny Rudd. I'm the registrar at the zoo. I have always felt a connection to nature and animals in my life. I knew I wanted to work with animals pretty much from the moment I had a coherent thought in my head. I have been at the zoo now for 42 years. I've been incredibly lucky to fall into being able to do this within such an amazing structure as the zoo can offer, where we're interested in science, we want to do something worthwhile. And that has been lifelong and will remain lifelong for me. It all started with harvest mice. In the mid-80s, I started to do some more research into what their situation was in the wild, and nobody really knew. Very difficult species to monitor because they just are never seen. 1998, I think, the Mammal Society did a survey and said they really had not been able to find very many harvest mice across Britain. These are animals that are so fragile, they disappear from areas really quickly. We know that habitat destruction is one of the causes of their decline, and they're very, very prone to things like pesticides. So at that point, we decided maybe they needed our help. So it was us really as Chester Zoo who brought harvest mice into the foreground, I think, really, and started to do some work with them. I was tasked to set up a experimental release to inform other projects should they ever want to do it. But in case a reintroduction was the end product, which we now know it has been, we followed all the guidelines for the reintroduction of any species anywhere. And that was onerous It was so much part of my life for 25 years. I bred all the mice, I microchipped 960 individuals myself with the help of the vet, and we didn't lose one single animal in that process. We had it absolutely down to a fine art. Every one of those animals was anaesthetized. It was an amazing process. We radio collared 40 mice with the minutest radio collars that were breaking science at the time. It was a lot of hard work from a huge team of volunteers. And the great thing was that we had a multidisciplinary team within the zoo. And eventually we decided on the date for the release, which was 2002. And it all started from there.
The zoo released a population of harvest mice just to the fields slightly west of where we are currently. They were unsurveyed for a while, and then a harvest mouse skull turned up in the barn owl pellet, and that prompted us to do some update surveys.
The email, when it dropped onto my desk saying, we've got harvest mouse and owl pellets and in nesting material here, we found harvest mouse evidence on the site still, all this time later, is just the best feeling in the world.
Last year, we did our first monitoring surveys where you sort of walk through the grass as a team, separating the grass out and trying to find the nests that they've weaved into the grass. They are actively increasing their population on site, which is really exciting. It's important to keep an eye on the populations we've got here, as they are a declining species in the UK.
I have been at the zoo for an awfully long time, and I do see the harvest mouse work I've done as a massive legacy. And I feel very proud of what we've done. People should care about them because they are part of our own heritage. You should care about all British wildlife. It's vital, it's on our doorstep. You know, as a zoo, we are very focused on a lot of animals that come from all over the rest of the world, but actually we're equally guardians of our own wildlife here in Chester and here in the UK. And I think we should all be interested in that, because there's so much that is happening in the UK that we can be proud of and have as our heritage. I think the whole story for this, what I would like people to learn, is that an individual can make a difference, because an individual could inspire other people to join them. One person on their own could not possibly have done this project with Harvest Mouse. It was about this amazing team around us here at the zoo, and lots of members of the public were inspired to help. And what it's telling you is that somebody, if you champion an animal, you can actually make a difference, because it has made a difference. We have succeeded.